2030 vision. Making Sense is excited to have EDC, a leader in youth employment space, host today's GYEO solution session webinar. First, I would like to provide some context for today's GYEO solution session. Since 2007, Making Sense has been convening the Global Youth Economic Opportunities Summit to share learning, develop partnership, and advance economic opportunities for youth. The inequities that COVID social justice movement have exposed have increased the need to accelerate change, particularly for young people, and has become a turning point for the Global Youth Economic Summit agenda. We are transforming our approach to fully include young people alongside adults in our activities to ensure that youth are co-designing solutions to their own problems and not just serving as token representative on panels. In addition, we are expanding the dialogue beyond Washington, D.C., the U.S., and to seek hosts or support convening around the world that will engage youth and adults locally to discuss solutions to SDG 8 that are relevant in their context. During 2021 and 2022, we are doing this through a series of events you see listed on this slide. GYEO dialogues, GYEO solution sessions or webinars on key topics of interest to young people and convenings, regional, global, a series of near-term activities designed to share the latest GYEO program sessions and gain commitment from actors globally to advance good practices within a common language framework of the SDG 8, specifically for achieving SDG 8, which is to promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full productive employment, and decent work for all. We also plan to establish convenings as annual touch points to track progress toward achievement of SDG 8. Next slide, please. Thank you for the financial and in-kind contributions from our partners who have joined us on this exciting journey. In addition to EDC today, I specifically want to recognize Palladium, our global session partner, alongside FHI 360 and CRS, who are regional session partners. We also want to acknowledge our first two local partners, Africa Skills Hub and the Latin America Leadership Academy. There are organizations joining us every day, so please let us know if you are interested in committing to GYEO 2030. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Nancy Spinner for our moderator. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining. I'm really excited to have a great group because this is just, it's a topic that's really important to us at EDC and all the presenters that have joined us today. So again, my name is Nancy Chervin. I'm an international technical advisor at EDC focusing on youth and workforce. My career really began with looking at work readiness, and that's really evolved over time. And you will see that as we go through the presentations and learn about different places that our presenters have worked and how they are seeing technology, turbulence, shifts in the world in general, changing what is expected of young people and all of us in today's workplace. So first I'm going to go through and introduce you to all of our presenters, starting with Audrey Gaw from Amazon Web Services. So I'll just pause while she comes on. Hi, do you want to give a quick hello?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. This is I love having this kind of conversation. So this is great. Thank you.
Thank you. So Audrey is a global digital skills operations program manager at AWS, Amazon Web Services training and certification. So AWS Digital Skills leads collaboration with governments and stakeholders in the area of digital skills strategy, reskilling, upskilling, and education modernization. As an operations program manager, she enables the AWS Digital Skills Enablement team to make data-driven decisions and streamline processes to drive mission outcomes. She's also the global co-president of the Amazon Black Employee Network, an employee-led affinity group, which is comprised of 12,000 Amazon employees, driving diversity, equity, and inclusion within Amazon. And her professional experience includes roles in recruitment and training. And before Amazon, she was at Nestle Cote d'Ivoire, PwC, Henkley, and the Nielsen Company. Thank you. So next I will introduce Satya. So I get so excited. I initially know Satya from our work together in Thailand. Satya comes to us as chief of party of our Aware 3 project, as well as another small piece of work in Southeast Asia. She has a focus on preparing marginalized youth for personal and career success in the digital economy. Satya specializes in designing and implementing training curricula for learners and teachers that promote 21st century skills. And prior to her work with EDC, she was with Intel in Thailand as the Corporate Affairs Director and Director of Special Initiative Division at the Institute of Promotion of Teaching, Science, and Technology under the Ministry of Education. She's led several public-private partnerships to promote education transformation, digital literacy, STEM. And she was a commentator on a TV show that I'm not going to be able to pronounce. My Thai didn't get that good. And she holds a bachelor's in biochem and master's in biochem from the University of Cambridge. You want to say a quick hello, Satya?
Yeah, thank you, Nancy, for the introduction. And I'm so happy to see you again today.
Thank you for joining. And Satya will be introducing a colleague from Indonesia. We will have him come through video because it was easier with language and time difference to have him come through video. His name is Ramat, and he is a SMNK 57 is his school. He's from our Aware 3 program. He's a culinary instructor, and he's been there for 12 years. He graduated from Culinary Education, Jakarta State University in 2021, and he demonstrates how educators can make use of the digital platform to better provide a better learning experience. And his YouTube channel, Pak Guru Masak, is a learning tool for students and those interested in culinary, with content ranging from basic culinary to creative entrepreneurial products. His channel now has over 100,000 views, which is quite impressive to me. And during COVID-19, as an Aware 3 facilitator, he gained further experience in using technology to interact with students and enhance learning. Okay.
Great. Yeah, it's an honor to bring a teacher's voice to the panel.
Great. And then lastly, we have Abir Ruhana. Hi, Abir.
Hello, dear.
Hi.
We're so to be around with you.
And we're so happy to have you. Abir is a university student at the American University of Science and Technology in Beirut, Lebanon. She's majoring in business management. And as a part of her degree, she enrolled in the Higher Education Capacity Development Program. It's USAID funded programs supported Work Ready Now course, which enables students to acquire important soft skills to meet the needs of local and international labor markets. Besides being a student, Abir works as a sales representative and assistant manager at the Middle East Dental Corporation since 2016. So thank you. Okay, Ceci, you can go ahead to the next slide. So this is a quick run through of how we'll be running our session. I will begin with some opening remarks, just framing today's topic. Then we will go into opening remarks from each of the panelists. Then we will facilitate, I will facilitate a moderated discussion. We have 4 questions that we will go through, 4 themes. Then get your questions ready. We're gonna have an interactive Q&A with you. And then lastly, final recommendations from each of our panelists and our closing. So you can chat at any time, share comments, questions. Ceci on the back end is moderating the chat. We will keep you muted until we come to the Q&A. In the Q&A, you can raise your hand, or we will also run through the chat and we will call on people whose questions we see in the chat. And you can have your camera off unless you're speaking. Go ahead, next slide. Okay, so rethinking skills in the era of the fourth industrial revolution and COVID-19. So rapid skills changes aren't new. I've been really looking at it in our work since about 2015. We had a program in Southeast Asia that was looking at the rapid economic growth in integration in that region. And there was a lot of impact already on technology, on the way that people work. So what we did, and then of course, COVID changed both economics and the nature of how people work. So what we did is we went through and we said, you know what, we need to really see what are these trends. And there was a lot of reports. Many of us on this call probably devoured the World Economic Forum report, Jobs of the Future. They have a series that comes out. They have their top 10 skills lists. But then there's others. LinkedIn curates, they go through all the postings, and it's usually in January. And they look at what are the trends for both soft skills. They'll have a top 10 list, and then technical skills of what the employers posting jobs are looking for. OECD, Deloitte, a lot of these companies have started releasing reports, not all focused on the global South, but not all on Western countries either. So we started looking at these, and then we did a process of mapping. We're seeing a lot of common things across these reports, but what really are those salient skills? What's jumping out to us, particularly with the work with the young people, with the youth that we work with, and we're preparing for this extremely turbulent economy. As we were reading all of these research, some of it was frameworks, some of it was reports, some of it was top 10 lists, there's a lot of different things. A lot of them were also talking about methodologies. Well, how do you teach these skills? How is teaching and learning different? Go ahead, next slide, Ceci. All right, I know it's teeny tiny, but I didn't want to overwhelm you with 15 slides. So obviously this is not a top 10 list, but if you look at the main categories, these are where the trends are with what we were seeing over and over and over. So first, I'll just start at what's going up and down: adaptability and learning, lifelong learning. Probably not a surprise to us, right? But it might be a surprise to young people that employers will expect you to be continuing to develop new skills on the job. Any of us who've lived through the last 2 years, meaning all of us, have all developed new skills in the workplace just to be able to continue to do our work. Critical thinking. Employers want people who can look at hard, tough, knotty problems and help them figure it out. Collaboration in virtual, all sorts of environments, virtual, in person, and with all types of different people, again, to figure out difficult, thorny problems. Specialized skills, that could be technical skills, IT skills, management skills. Of course, there are a lot of lists. If you are going, you will start to see trend lists and reports that might focus more on the digital skills. There is a report that was in the prior list from Coursera. They did something really cool where they analyzed their in-demand training courses and the skills that were in demand by different regions of the world. And it gets a lot into these specialized skills. So you can see, okay, what's happening in Asia doesn't resonate for me in Africa, but oh, I can see these trends that they're speaking to. Yes, that makes sense in my country. Digital skills. Sometimes I was seeing not just digital, the basic digital literacy, it's digital fluency, especially with young people. There's an expectation of being comfortable in a digital space, but we'll be hearing from some of our colleagues about specialized digital skills. What's cloud computing? Is that in Africa? Is that in South America? Where is this? Is this going to impact somebody who lives at the end of the dusty road? let's learn about that, right? It's not just in the fastest moving economies that you may see these digital skills, it's really everywhere now. Innovation. Employers are looking for people who can look at problems, tease out problems, and then innovate new ideas. Career pathways. Young people, as we know, are often ill-equipped to understand, even before things were changing so quickly, what is needed in the local labor market. And now it's even, moving so quickly. So how do young people set goals that are not just limited to the top 10 jobs, engineer, doctor, lawyer, or whatever it may be that they hear about, teacher, nurse, around them, and go a little deeper and start to understand what is in demand around them, so they can set goals that align with their interests, but also where the economy is going. Global citizenship. And diversity, inclusion, working with people with disabilities, there is finally a lot more awareness around these issues. So how can we be mindful in the work the trainings that we do with young people about this? Green and blue skills, not always in the skills list when you're looking at soft skills, but it's coming up more and more and more. So often there might be more around climate change, needs in the economy, but it was important to us to make sure this was here. Young people looking at skills like managing waste, resources, innovations for a new, healthy blue and green economy and world. Go ahead, next slide. Teaching and learning methods. So how do you teach these skills? Well, a lot of it's getting out of the classroom, doing projects, working with employers, doing work-based learning, working on design thinking types of activities where you're looking at a real problem, figuring it out. Lifelong learning skills on your own, doing self-paced courses. Obviously, instructors as facilitators, not just lecturers. Many of us who work in the youth space are accustomed to that, but a lot of education systems are very traditional. So it's inculcating that idea. What did I miss here? Mentorship, coaching, really getting to know people in the economy, in the market, in the environment around you, and getting some support. Go ahead, next slide. All right, so enough from me. Let's hear from our panelists. So we're going to go one by one, and we're going to start with Satya and Rama. And each panelist will share what kinds of changes are you seeing in the labor market? What are the implications for youth? And how has COVID changed or accelerated these trends? So go ahead for Satya.
Thank you, Nancy. And Nancy had already give some background of Ramat. So I just add that Mr. Ramat is a teacher from EDC Aware 3 program that focus on preparing Indonesia youth with soft skills, digital skills, and innovation skills for the digital economy. So before I add anything, let's hear Ramat share about what he's noticing in Indonesia.
Dampak COVID-19 ini sangat berpengaruh pada psikis semua peserta didik dan juga berdampak pada ekonomi, di mana semua peserta didik dengan tingkat ekonomi yang berbeda pada masa sebelum COVID-19 maupun pada masa COVID-19 ini ada perubahan dari sisi ekonomi. Nah, untuk itu saya sebagai guru dalam membangun minat siswa untuk terus belajar adalah satu, memberikan motivasi secara moral. Kemudian kedua, saya selalu berkomunikasi melalui media sosial, baik WhatsApp, Instagram, maupun Facebook, sesuai media sosial yang kami miliki. Sekolah bisa bekerja sama dengan dunia industri dan dunia usaha atau DUDI dengan cara istilahnya di Dinas Pendidikan ini sedang tren istilahnya adalah mengawinkan kurikulum sekolah dan kurikulum di industri. Jadi bagaimana kebutuhan kurikulum di industri untuk meningkatkan kompetensi peserta didik sesuai dengan kebutuhan industri. Nah, di awal pembelajaran, di tahun ajaran, kami melakukan sinkronisasi kurikulum sekolah dengan DUDI atau dunia usaha dan dunia industri. Lalu kami membuat MOU ya dengan industri, lalu kami membuat kelas khusus industri agar peserta didik dapat diserap oleh industri setelah lulus. Nah, jadi dengan adanya COVID-19 itu memberikan hikmah tersendiri terhadap perkembangan industri IT, kemudian penggunaan IT dan digitalisasi. Tren saat ini kan peserta didik yang mengambil jurusan atau kompetensi tata boga di sekolah, itu kan mereka fokus nanti bekerja. Ya, bekerja di industri tentunya. Selain itu mereka juga ada yang kuliah atau melanjutkan ke jenjang pendidikan selanjutnya. Tapi target kami adalah SMK itu menciptakan lapangan kerja atau membuat peserta didik untuk masuk kerja diterima di industri. Nah, trennya di industri itu tentunya ada di bidang kuliner, ya, di kitchen tentunya, di hotel di bagian food and beverage product dan service. Ada dua departemen, yaitu departemen food and beverage product maupun food and beverage service. Untuk masa depan mereka itu adalah selain bekerja adalah berwirausaha, Pak. Untuk dunia tata boga sendiri, mereka saya terapkan atau saya bekali dengan mereka misalnya bisa membuat video, ya, video tentang masak, ya, kemudian mereka belajar editing, seperti itu, lalu menguploadnya di channel YouTube mereka masing-masing. Jadi mereka pun sekarang banyak yang sudah mempunyai channel atau konten di bidang kuliner untuk mempromosikan diri mereka sendiri.
So if I may add, what Rahmat is seeing in Indonesia, I'm actually seeing in Thailand as well. We see that the labor market is looking for competencies that are in line with the industry needs. We see that work-based experience is critical. They're looking for someone who have proved that they have done something and understand the workplace. We've been seeing that more youth are inspired to be entrepreneurs. We also noticed that the pandemic accelerated the development of the digital skills. And lastly, we noticed that students are now using digital platform to learn, to showcase their profiles, and to connect with other people around the world. So that's what we are seeing in the region, Nancy.
Okay, thank you. So now we're going to move over to Beirut. Abir, what types of changes are you seeing in the labor market and how this is impacting youth like you, and how has COVID changed or accelerated this?
Hello?
Yes.
Go ahead, we hear you.
Yes, dear, can you hear me? Because we've been having some technical issues.
You're great. We hear you, Abir. Go ahead.
All right. Lately, COVID in here been doing like lots of impact. So everything been changed to as an online system since then, due to lockdowns that we've been having and so on and so forth, even economic-wise. And then a great example, our university since then. We've been doing all our classes, even exams, like all the materials, courses online, and then even schools are into such doing the same programs as well. And that's about it.
So what about jobs? What are you seeing about, I know your country is also in a very difficult economic time right now. So what are you noticing in the last few years about jobs and what employers are looking?
We've been facing a super bad economy here in Lebanon since then. in the labor market, how the the dollar exchange rate or so on and so forth, it's super bad, the crisis that we are in. So we've been facing some tough issues. Hoping we're managing it step by step, and eventually.
Okay, thank you. And lastly, over to Audrey. So what changes are you noticing in the labor market, and how COVID has exacerbated this?
Yeah, those are a very good question. I mean, we've seen that the IT infrastructure transformation is happening, and enterprises are actually looking for efficiency and the desire to gain and keep the competitive advantage through faster innovation. So you've highlighted one of the key things about cloud. What is cloud computing? And for those in the room that are new to cloud and understanding to the, quote unquote, the term cloud computing is the on-demand delivery of IT resources over the internet with pay-as-you-go pricing. And so cloud has quite simply changed, is becoming a game changing with the IT industry. Cloud is the ultimate enabler, opening new channels of revenue by leveraging technologies like AI, artificial intelligence, and Internet of Things. Other topics like data analysis, networking, project management, cybersecurity all have greatly influenced by cloud adoption. This kind of growth has made it very difficult for IT decision makers to fill cloud job vacancies. And there is a cloud skill shortage due to part of skills needed to ensure seamless orchestration across multiple functions. So there's just ain't been enough experts to fill all of those vacancies. So what we've done is that we've actually with us, and when I mean us as Amazon Web Service, we've developed an area called education program, where we collaborate with education institution and workforce development organization to make curriculum available free of charge for students and non-traditional learners. All of this effort are successful because of the link to employment readiness, especially to the point that you highlighted before. This program enables individuals to be ready for AWS cloud job market with critical technical and professional skills necessary to succeed in an entry cloud role. So also one thing that we need to realize that it's not just the focus on, we're not just focusing on graduating talent from technical education, but we also need to pay close attention to reskilling, upskilling on the current population of technical and professional to accelerate GYEO transformation, because these are also a big part of big players within enabling.
Thank you. I have so many questions, but we will continue our discussion. Ceci, if you don't mind just flashing the slide for a moment. We're going to go now into our series of discussion questions. So I have 4 discussion questions. The themes, and this is a sequence I'll go through, is the impact of technology, the role of the private sector. Then we'll go into how schools can reopen. And lastly, adaptable and resilient youth. And just so you know, the photo in the left is from Liberia. That is a labor market assessment where we had a team of youth labor researchers going out and trying to better understand the current labor market in Liberia. Okay, so Ceci, you can take off the slide so we can have the presenters, and you can keep Audrey. Yeah, it's up to you if you have all of us or two. There's lots of videos about. So the first question, and this is for all of the presenters, is how is technology shaping the labor market, and what kinds of digital skills do youth require? How is technology shaping the labor market, and what kinds of digital skills do youth require? So let's start. Since we were just on Audrey, we'll continue there for a moment. If you could tell us a little bit more, maybe help us paint the picture, maybe in the types of places in the global south, whether it's Africa or other regions, what are you really seeing in the labor market? Help us understand what the trends are.
Yeah, sure, no problem. The trends that we've seen is that obviously we've seen an increase in awareness of digital skills. Now, what we're also seeing is that COVID have shaped how companies are responding to those trends, and how governments are also responding to those trends. And so, as I mentioned earlier, is that we've identified that adopting cloud has become a significant, important part of the market, and especially within technology. And what we want to do at the moment is that how do we ensure that the youth are ready for those changes that is coming? And to your point, the trend is that we are trying to get we are getting what's it called, the youth ready through the various programs, through various collaboration. And I think that's the best way to move forward, especially if I think about the collaboration, for example, that we have with Liberia, right? There is a trend in terms of unemployment rate rising. And obviously yourself, EDC, are working on making sure those individuals are skilled in a specific area. And we as AWS has the content to enable those and to support and putting together that collaboration together. We are able to support the youth skills and also try to get traction from an employment perspective.
I was muted. Thank you. And so now I'm going to zoom us over to Satya. Satya's programs have been largely in the secondary TVET space. And I'm wondering what you are seeing in terms of the digital skills.
Yeah.
And what you're required. Go ahead, Satya.
Thank you, Nancy. In my opinion, the only way is up. So technology will influence the labor market more and more. And we all know that technology is changing at an exponential rate. So the youth need to learn how to learn, right? Because once they step out of their education institutions, what they know might already be outdated. So I think COVID has been helping us in creating that scenario for them that, they get to self-learn largely, or learning from their teachers, but they are like sitting at their own home, right? And they are learning through online platform. And also through Aware3, we also help them showcase their skills. That's some important skills that they need to learn as well, to showcase what they know, their competencies and their experience. Also, they need to learn how to collaborate and problem solve with others. Also, an important part of the adaptation to the new technology-driven world is that if they're not creative and innovative, they might be easily replaced by the smart system. So, all the youth should also have access to creativity and innovation skills development. One challenge though that Aware 3 is facing in Tibet education is how do we influence the education institutions to be more future forward, giving priorities also to the future skills for students' long-term success in their career pathway in the digital economy against a more traditional skill sets that may help them land a job working in a kitchen or factory today. You know, Ramat mentioned that many of his students, after they graduate, they went and work in the kitchen and or maybe in a production in a food service. But this kind of positions are very risky. You know, they might be replaced by smart system in the future. So it's a balance between the skill sets that would get you a job next year, but then the long career pathway that they are having in the future. So they also need to have access to innovation, skill development, and creativity as well. So, you know, and we can see that Ramat was sharing that, you know, he was teaching through different technology tools and he was giving students opportunity to create digital portfolios and to create and design technology using different platforms. So, you know, it's a balance between teaching for like next year and the whole career pathway afterwards.
So give us just one example that you know that comes to mind, because I've heard from this program, right? You've got youth in, say, culinary. Let's stay with culinary. What's an example of a project that one of the youth did applying a digital skill that they learned to culinary? Could you just give us one concrete example?
Yeah, I think Ramat also shared this video as well, that you know, he helped the students create YouTube content. So they would do how to prepare Indonesia rice cake at home because of the, you know, the lockdown, and then they would put that content on YouTube. That, you know, showcase their own skills and also give them you know, they understand the process of in the future, how they can express themselves to technology and also making connections with other people. And maybe they could become an influencer in culinary in the future. So that's one example.
Great.
Yeah. Another example. Okay, just one more example, Nancy. So, you know, normally sometimes in culinary art, they focus on how tasty the food is. Right? Aware 3 students also learn about food photography so that it also look good on social media as well.
I'm glad you mentioned that one, because that's an example I've heard from some of the colleagues on that project, that in this COVID pivot, a lot of small businesses had to start selling their food online for food delivery, let's say. And they were like, I don't even know where to begin. I don't have photos of my food. And I love that you guys had designed a very simple course working with industry, with experts, how to do professional food photography. And then the learners could go and help these businesses do this pivot, which was really, I mean, that was just so exciting to hear about. All right, Abir, it's your turn. So how are you seeing in Lebanon technology impacting young people in the job market they're going into?
In Lebanon, first of all, we need to have some changing the type of jobs, and the fears around automation and technology impact on jobs continue to grow into the innovation and to have potential change for the employment. Although millions of jobs could be lost as a result of new technologies, but at the same time, it will make a great impact. By doing so, there's the manufacturing companies are experimenting with having the use mechanical exoskeletons to reduce strain and fatigue with the lifting heavy jobs and objects. And in sales, we need to adapt to customer preferences to the online media, and through technological change has reduced the need for routine mechanized work and increased both the demand and the pay skills for each person. And then also due to the technological digital skills for nowadays that it's changing into the communication application, network access, internet for managing information. And then such skills just like social media, search engine marketing, content marketing, data analytics, and planning. So having these as a good impact and required even here in Lebanon, and hoping it will make some type of change due to the crisis that we've been facing.
Great, thank you. So now I'm going to go over to Audrey first. And we want to hear about how the private sector can play a stronger role in enhancing skills and competency development for youth. And then we'll go to Satya next. So private sector role in developing these skills.
Yeah, the role for private sector is very important. I mean, just some statistics alone. So globally, according to the World Economic Forum, we need to reskill about 1 billion people by 2030, right? That's 85 million jobs to be displayed and 96 million new ones to be created by 2025. And like I was saying earlier about the key to this is collaboration. So as a a single actor, we cannot solve the reskilling exchange. So businesses, government, society need to come together to provide education, skill, and job to boost local country GDP. And this is also, I think, from our perspective as Amazon Web Services, with our program, and what we do with our program is working hand in hand, like I mentioned, with the organizations, with education institutions and government to remove barriers to education and forge new paths for individuals to develop cloud expertise and obtain certification and then enter the technology workforce. And private sector needs to also invest in local areas, not just, I'm not speaking about monetary value, but when I mean investment is looking at developing the institutions, working developing the institutions. So like if I think about higher education, for example, working hand in hand and looking at the content. Is that relevant to today's world in what we're planning to hire? Because if the higher institutions are delivering training or content that is not relevant to today's world, it means that we could see a gap in the delivery or the learning for between youth and workers. So we need to make sure that the content of our content working hand in hand with those institutions we have, we can ensure that the collaboration, we can ensure that content or learning skills are being pushed over to the learners at the right time, and so that when they do come out of universities, they are able to apply those skills with potential employers. And private sector needs to be able to provide those researches and information to those type of organizations.
And Satya, what have you learned in your work about collaborating with the private sector to develop these skills?
Yeah, private sector is an important part in this whole ecosystem. They contribute and also benefit from the youth workforce skill development. The main the biggest way that Aware 3 is working with private sector is to encourage them to provide work experience and internship for the youth, because by opening the doors for young people entering the job market, they help the youth grow relevant skills, cultivate work readiness mindset, and also start to form their career inspiration. And in addition to providing the internship experience, the industry can also inform school curriculum. That's something that I think we should do more. And Raman mentioned the marriage between the school curriculum and the industry training courses, right? That's very romantic, but most of the time it has to be an arranged marriage, right? So it's not happening organically, right? So, but there is a strong need that we need to update the school curriculum with the new technology and the current use cases. On the other hand, we also need to make sure that the training courses from the industry side cultivate transferable skills. We have seen the trainings that are like very narrow. So actually the training from the industry side should not specifically prepare youth to carry out like a narrow set of instructions to work in that particular technology product or platform, but it should be a good instructional design for youth to work on a project that they are not just the user of technology, but they should get a chance to create with the technology as well.
Great, thank you. And what was always interesting to me, we know those of us who worked in the curriculum side of things, especially technical, we know it's no small feat. So could you just share to help paint the picture of how in the Aware program you were able to do these short courses and make it manageable and not a big whole curriculum review process, which we all know what that looks like, but how were you able to do a real-time delivery of short courses to be able to start addressing the gap while that big curriculum review is planned for the long term?
Yeah, we conducted what we call industry master classes. And it's also, big thanks to COVID that everybody is working and learning online, because if we want to arrange this at the school, it would involve people from the industry coming to the school and meeting with the students. It is possible, but it's also we need to make a lot of arrangement. But in the industry classes that we have is completely online. So the speakers from the industry are just speaking from their own desk, sharing an hour with the students, but they get an updated view of how fashion design or culinary art or data science is what's happening in the workplace for those fields. So instead of doing a really intensive curriculum synchronization, we did have a small scale curriculum synchronization, as connecting the industry and the teachers and looking for the gaps, and then for those gaps we create mini master classes for the industry to come in and connect with the students online.
Great, thank you. So Abir, I'm going to you next. And I'd love to hear from the perspective of a university student, how could a school or university be more responsive to changes in the labor market?
How they could be effective? Well, there's two main sectors or reasons, especially nowadays, as we're talking due to COVID. And how they're putting it up into being online. So
all right, so moving online was how they were being more responsive. Yeah. Okay, and in your university, do you do internships or any activities to get young people into the workplaces?
Yes, we definitely do, and then especially we are the skills that they offer, including with the HECD, we are involved in it, and they do internship with different we have several malls and shops like around the university, and they have like contracts with them where actually students can get their internship from there, and also opening up opportunities. We mentioned this, equipping the student with the needed digital skills, collaborating with the industry to make the program more employable, and the education system also is being more adapting into the curricula of the needs of their students.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, Satya, you've started to answer this question, but I'm going to still return to you anyhow. Are there any other recommendations or ideas that you have about how education systems can be more responsive?
The education system has disrupted itself a lot during the pandemic already, I think. So before COVID-19, we, in my other project, we tried to push for better access to digital skills development. It was very hard. We pitched for virtual internship, very little buy-in. So, at that time, everyone attached to like the face-to-face tradition. But then the COVID hit, and everywhere, we went into work from home mode, right? And it include the education sector cannot escape as well. So of course, online learning is not optimum, but through the difficult situation, we have seen by ourselves that, what's it like to work in a digital environment, right? And we also started to see what ubiquitous learning, access to quality education from anywhere, anytime, any device may look like. So in Aware 3, during the pandemic, we pair up thousands of students to virtual internship via an online platform that generate a lot of data for us to learn from, because all the interaction was online. And, those data, it would be a pity that after the pandemic, we just switch back to the face-to-face mode and neglect the opportunity to use the data that we capture or continue to generate data to optimize the learning process, for example. So I say, we should keep the momentum going. And to be more responsive to the labor market, this is more and more innovation driven, right? The education system should be innovative as well, right? And one important key success factor, though, is how well the system provides support for the teachers, for the education personnel through this transformation, because, it's not easy. And, the teachers or education personnel have to put in a lot of effort to keep up with the changes. So to circle back to your question, the education system is less agile in keeping up with all the changes. So in this system, we have the innovator and the early adopter at one end, and we have the laggard at the other end, and other people in between, right? So we have pockets of successes driven by the COVID disruption. The question is, how do we scale the models, that we found that is responsive to more and more digitized world? And how do we provide equal access to digital skills and innovation skills development? And I like to highlight that we are generating a huge amount of data when we transition classroom to an online environment. How do we make use of this data to inform instructional design and policy design to respond to changes in the labor market?
Thank you. So now for my last question, I'm going to start with Audrey, and then I'm going to move to Abir. is how can we ensure that youth remain adaptable and resilient in this rapid workforce change? So how can we support youth to remain adaptable and resilient? Audrey, you're muted.
Sorry, thank you. Technology, right? So to ensure that youth remain adaptable, we need to make sure that we, for example, from a private sector perspective, the content that we provide is always up to date, right? So, for example, like, and I'll keep on referring to cloud computing. Cloud computing ranks among the top hard skilled company need most year. Oops, sorry, that is me. Year after year, right? And we've built curriculum and programs to ensure that youth has easy access to content to enable them to keep them up to date. So as AWS, and just an example alone, the AWS Academy curriculum, for example, helps educators to stay at the forefront of cloud innovation so that they equip the student with the skills and that hiring manager values. So we work with the instructors, the educators, who make sure that we have up-to-date content that is provided to the instructors, and then that fall back into the education system, so they go back into the classroom and make sure those relevant content are then taught to the students. We have an what's it called, GYEO skills or GYEO content platform. AWS GYEO content platform has over 500 e-learning skills that range from ML, AI, etc. And allowing those content to be constantly updated allows youth to remain, to remain adaptable to those issues. And also the conversation that we're having today, right? We need to make sure that we have more and more conversation to still create awareness within the wider community to ensure that that is then fed back into, the youth, and so that they know what is possible for them. What are the different, skills? What are the different skills that is open to them? What are the different jobs roles that is open to them? Because the issue is that we have tech, but what exactly, and some youth exact today is they don't understand tech. They don't understand the meaning of tech. Tech is very vast in itself. It can mean, for example, to Satya's level is, the point is that it can mean like going to YouTube and being and showing your video skills, right? It's a wide range of different skills that needs to be showcased in our world, in industry, and it's our job to do that.
Thank you. And so, Abir, let's end with you. What is your recommendation for how we can ensure that youth remain adaptable and resilient to rapid workforce change? I mean, you're living in an environment with a really rapidly changing, challenging economic environment. So from a youth's perspective, what's your advice for being adaptable and resilient?
We need the youth need to be trained to be confident in their own ability to cope with the stress of life. And then also we need to train them on being optimistic and keep a positive thinking. Also by setting reasonable goals to deal with the problem. And as well as actively working on solution will also help the youth to feel more in control rather than just waiting for things to happen. Being proactive allows youth to help make the goals reality, and developing problem-solving skills and focusing on developing a logical way on what to work through the common problems of it.
Thank you so much. So Ceci, you can keep the speakers pinned, but if you don't mind just sharing the slide for us so we can move into the Q&A round. Perfect. Oh, I'm jumping ahead of myself. Sorry. So go ahead, next slide. Oh, before Q&A, it was the last recommendation. Ceci was right, and I was in my own planet. Oh, Ceci, could you put the slide back on? Well, she does that. We'd love to hear. Oh, actually, no. I got totally. Ceci, do you mind putting the slide back on? Yes. I got out of sequence here. So what's next? Are we in Q&A or are we in final recommendations? I think we're.
You were right. It's Q&A, and I have a couple of questions already from the chat.
Okay. And could you put the Q&A slide up?
Okay. Give me 1 second.
Sorry, guys. This is adaptability at play. Okay. There we are. So for the Q&A, questions from the audience, you can, by now we all know how to raise our hand in Zoom. So go ahead and raise your hand if you have a question. Ceci will call on people, but we'll start with what she's seen in the chat. So Ceci, go ahead and share the questions you're seeing from the chat. And she will manually unmute people when they will be speaking.
Actually,
go ahead.
The first question is from Upensi, but I see him raising his hand, so I'm going to unmute him so he can ask a question.
Okay, and when you ask your question, if you could share your name, what country you're from, and your role where you work.
Upensi, I think now you can unmute.
Yes, thank you. No, sorry, I thought you were going to post the question. My name is Mpenzi Innocent. I'm from Rwanda. I work for EDC. I work in EDC team, Rwanda. We are having different projects here in Rwanda. I used to work in HDAC. It was a youth employment project, and now we are in Bright. So I was having, my question was, normally it was coming, I wanted one person in the panelist to respond to the question that I'm going to ask. Is Satya? Satya, yes. Satya, my first question was, when she was presenting, she said about the youth, that the youth need to learn how to learn. So I quoted that. It's I took it as a quote from me. And also, I would like to know how they engage the youth. How is it collaborative? So the second question I posted in the group is, how are we involving the youth or student for TVET? How could the system be responsive to the youth with the private sector's awareness? This, yeah, I think like to learn how to learn inspired me, and I would like to know how is it connecting. And also the first question was, how many digital portfolio or how many digital platforms do you have? And how do you engage the youth like in that participatory? And is the private sector really aware of those digital platforms there so that it can create that connectivity between student or the youth with the private sectors, with private sector for the easy connectivity for the labor market? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So let me address the first question about learning how to learn first. So we use the project-based approach to promote learning how to learn. Instead of students address a narrow question, we get them to address a wide question, try to problem solve or create a project that doesn't have one answer. So they are using new technology through the facilitation of the teachers. So we are not just like throw them the questions and then go away and like let them struggle about learning how to learn, but it's all facilitated. But it's not a step-by-step instruction, but they just need to figure out the questions themselves. So from the situation, they have to define the problem and find ways to address the question. So by having a project-based learning opportunity, they learn the new technology tools and also learn how to solve problems and innovate. On your questions about how, what kind of platform we are using to connect the youth with the private sectors, it's actually like a job matching platform. So the private sectors can actually post an internship opportunity. So, but we also help them to define the project so that the youth would understand and develop a measurable milestone, so that when the student, after they learn Work Ready Now, our soft skills development program, they would know how to create a digital profile for themselves so they can apply for a particular internship opportunity, pitching with their profile. And then, if the private sector, after they consider several youth, they might pick the one that aligns most with that project. And then they would, the two partners would enter into the collaboration into the virtual internship. So the students would chat, it's like normal chat messages, but it's collected in this platform. So we can witness how the student communicate with the private sector partners. And before that, we actually train them about how to communicate effectively with the supervisors, right? So they would get to practice what they learn and submit their deliverables in different milestones and get feedback from the industry. So it's not a very complex platform, but at the back end, we actually get a lot of data, to also to help the teachers or educator assess or feedback to the students, and collectively it's a big amount of data to design the curriculum and identify places that we want to support the students more. Have I answered all the questions?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay, Sassy, where
Sure.
shall we go next? Yeah.
Okay, we have a next question in the chat as well. I'm going to read it now for the sake of time. From Matthew Brennan. He thanks Satya for the great examples on young people using technology to advance culinary industry. And the question is, how can industries, culinary and others recognize this by elevating young people's creativity and digital skills in the process?
Well, should I take that? Okay. What we found is that before COVID, it took a lot of convincing. But after COVID, when everybody in the region start transitioning to online, ordering food, it's become something that we don't need to convince them anymore, about how important of using social media. And I think the youth themselves are demonstrating their strength and creativity. But I think, from the master classes that we conducted for the youth, it also helped create the level playing field, because we do have some youth who have very high digital skills because they had access before COVID. So with some guidance from the industry practitioner, other youth who are probably less skilled also see the opportunity or see the possibilities and feel inspired to brush up or try to strengthen their skills as well. On the employer side, I think although I would have to stress that, you know, the photos can be nice, but the test would also have to be good so as well. So on the employer side, you know, I think it's the core value that, you know, if you are in culinary, for example, you need to deliver the value, but the digital skills are also the added competencies that would, you know, if you have several youth apply for the position, if they can also showcase in their digital portfolio some example of their food photography, you know, that youth would stand out, right? So I think on the employer side, they see from their own experience and see the evidence from the youth skills. That, you know, that's is a very strong factor that help convince the employers.
Okay, I have a next question. And it's from, and excuse the pronunciation, it's from Cebu Brulian. And the question is, how can we ensure that senior experience and knowledge are not lost in the workplace? How to face resistance to change?
I can take that. So how can you ensure that senior experience and knowledge are not lost in the workplace? This is where you put, you know, from our experience is that senior knowledge is vital, and then we use them as training possibilities, because what you've learned and what you cultivated will fall back into an environment, a youthful environment, such as working collaboration with key organizations. Those experience, I mean, from an AWS perspective, is that you know, the same way we are advising or we are providing content to institutions to say, hey, here's an updated cloud content. That's the same way we are saying to our employees is that, hey, here is new content. Start learning and start being updated, start to actually having that new knowledge and still cultivating that seniority, that kind of experience that you have, but also try to put them in a way that can be fed back into the community. And into the second question, how to face resistance to change. I mean, change is inevitable, right? The growth of technology is fast growing. We've seen it for COVID. But like I mentioned, is what we try to do is really much try to incorporate the mindset of training and ensuring that we have all the resources available to all. And so that as we are moving along with our employees.
Great, thank you. All right, I don't see anyone else jumping to respond to that question. So Ceci, do we have other questions?
We do, Nancy. So the next question is from Leila Itani, and again, apologies for the pronunciation. The question is, what proportion of the curriculum or course activities can be in the form of business skills? And maybe Leila, if you can clarify, you're referring to digital skills. I'm not sure by the question, if you can put that in the chat, please.
I think she means that the digital skills. So please let me take that question first, and then Leila can add, clarify the skills. From my perspective, digital skills should cut across the curriculum. So it's not like you learn other things using, the traditional tool, and you have like a special subject being a digital tools, but it should be a horizontal rather than a vertical, right? So when you learn math, science, or English, you can learn with the digital tools. So if we are talking about the proportion, I don't think we need to like dedicate a subject to digital skills, but it should cut across the learning of all subjects.
I'll add to that as well. I mean, building on digital skills curriculum, and I think it's all down to identifying the job roles that's out there in the workplace, and then working backward to identifying the skills and content that is needed to the educational level, and what type of a curriculum is linked to those job roles. So, for example, you know, all our pathways within AWS is linked to a specific role. So if I look at, for example, starting at the cloud practitioner and moving into a technical role like the solution architect or developer or system administrator, would then enable individuals to validate their skills through an AWS certification and then showcase their skills using them to drive in their career. And I think we can't just talk about curriculum without not identifying what are the possibilities that is linked to those curriculum. And so once we identify those possibilities, then we can look at restructuring curriculum and building curriculum. And we did something similar with in South Africa with CETA, where in partnership with other collaborating organizations, so not just with AWS, but one of the organizations within South Africa, working hand in hand to define what is the technical curriculum that can be applied in tomorrow's education. So looking at Internet of Things, what are the requirement criteria that we are looking for as private sectors and other organizations, and working hand in hand to define the structure for that specific curriculum. And then it becomes a validated skill. So not from, again, I'm not referring to AWS, but a validated skill across the board. So if someone is going through this curriculum, they can come up with a certification to say, I finished this curriculum and I have a validation skill around Internet of Things. And then that will help them shape their career moving forward.
Thank you. And let's take one last question. I'm seeing from Fadi. Some skills can't be learned through technology. They should be direct human contact, like sales techniques. So how do you look at this? So any recommendation? And this is getting into those other soft skills, right? That are really, or management skills and other skills. Yeah. Go ahead, and this will be a last question.
Yeah, of course, I'll take that. I mean, which is why we have a range of programs, I mean, for us in AWS. We understand that having just relying on just technology is not just enough. If I look at our AWS Restart program, it's a 12-week intensive program that looks at the technology part of it, but also look at the soft skills. And we as AWS, we have local training partners on the ground where we see there's a need. So if earlier I brought in the example of what's it called, Senegal. And Senegal, with working EDC is our close partner of ours. So we are actually working with EDC to deliver the content with a training partner alongside with EDC to actually deliver the content to the learners directly. We see, and because the Restart program is an intensive course, it's 12 weeks, it's 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. We also want to make sure that when they finish the training, they just don't come out and just say, I just got the technical skill and that's it. But we also want to make sure that also got the soft skills. So CV building, interviews, and etc., to make it a full package so that when they go, they are, and this is what we call employer ready. And that can be, need to be taught directly. However, we need to take also the consideration of COVID during lockdown, a lot of those programs had to be put on hold and moved to, virtual training because we couldn't risk, going face to face. But as we are, I'm hoping and fingers crossed that, we are going to put COVID behind us, that we can finally start to deliver those training in person and have a great impact to individuals in the classroom.
Great. Thank you. And I know I said a last question, but I saw a good question come up that I can't resist. So Matthew Bremen had a great question about VR. Is anyone on the panel familiar with virtual reality technology and how it's being used to interactively train people on practical skills for future jobs? And if so, does VR have a future for workforce training?
Yeah, we start to see VR training in Thailand, and in Tibet education, it's quite helpful because some of the machines and tools are quite expensive. So the students get to do, the practice on the VR before they actually work on the real thing. So it's actually save costs and also provide access to schools in the remote area that has that don't have the tools.
Do you know do you have any examples? Do you know what kind of skills they're learning on VR?
For example, we have many Tibet colleges in Thailand that when they learn about fixing television, for example, the television that they have is like the old-fashioned television. Or the car model that they learn about how to assemble the parts. But then with VR technology, they get to practice, with not with the real thing, but with the virtual reality.
So to learn a new TV that they might not have at the shop because it's expensive, but they can start to manipulate virtually the mechanics of that new television design. Great, thank you. So before I move to the closing slide, I just want to point out the photos. So we've got young people from two very different countries, but both navigating changing labor market. So the young woman on the left is a university student also from Lebanon. And on the top are young people in Rwanda doing a community mapping or maybe an observation or some such thing in their community to learn about the businesses around them. Okay, go ahead, Ceci. So we will do our last closing remarks. So each one of you, what is one scalable recommendation to achieve SDG 8, ensuring inclusive, decent, and productive employment for youth? So let's, just to make it easy, I'll go top down. We'll start with Audrey, and then we'll go to Abir, and then we'll go to Satya. So one recommendation from each of you.
That's a good one. Got me thinking. Wow. One recommendation is for me is really much to just open the door to all. Right, to ensure inclusivity. Yeah, I think it's really, I think when we look at, and when I mean open the door to all, not just look at, from which, I mean, I have to say, I love this conversation and I love the panel from the different background, because that actually points out that the need of digital skills is not so focused around Europe or the developed countries. We need to look outside, and this is how we can be more inclusive and around the youth. Because if I look at places like Africa, for example, there is a strong need to have to have youth, to have skill for youth. due to also to the number of population. So we look at the number of population versus the number of unemployment, looking at also, you know, those youth that are coming out of school that are not able to get to those. So it's like the circle is it's a very interesting circle, and we need to be able to engage with those youth and start building them, training them, and so that employers can start using them. And then if also when you look at the African environment, you have a higher startup number compared to enterprises. So how do we enable those startups? How do we enable innovation in those startups using digital skills? And I think for me, that is a way to ensure inclusive.
Excellent. Thank you. We're all nodding here. Adir, over to you. One last recommendation from you.
Well, one of the main recommendations is more do more training for schools and for universities.
Thank you. We are doing our best. We will. I love it. Yeah, it's true. We're all here.
Saran saya atau rekomendasi.
And go ahead, Satya.
Yeah, I think we have I'm hearing Ramat's voice, so let's hear from him first.
Saran saya atau rekomendasi saya kepada guru-guru adalah dapat mengikuti atau langsung terjun di asosiasi-asosiasi kuliner. Nah, asosiasi.
Sorry, is the sound working?
The sound is working, but we don't see the subtitle.
Okay, just give me 1 sec. I'm going to play it again. Adaptability. Here we go.
Saran saya atau rekomendasi saya kepada guru-guru adalah dapat mengikuti atau langsung terjun di asosiasi-asosiasi kuliner. Nah, asosiasi kuliner saat ini yang saya ikuti adalah asosiasi chef profesional atau SCP. Dengan mengikuti asosiasi tersebut, kita dapat bertemu dalam perkumpulan tersebut dengan para chef di hotel atau di industri, dan kita dapat ngelobi kepada mereka, para chef-chef, karena kita sudah kenal, untuk menitipkan peserta didik kita untuk diterima di sana. Jadi mereka betul-betul bekerja samanya. Nah, kalau di Indonesia ini selama ini yang saya cermati masih masing-masing industri-industri, pemerintah. Nah, jadi pesan saya atau saran saya yang saya sampaikan atau rekomendasikan adalah terus bekerja sama dengan industri didukung oleh dinas pendidikan terkait.
Excellent, thank you. And Satya, did you have any closing remarks, or is it all from Rama for you?
Very short from me that, I think we should use an ecosystem approach. The government, private sectors, NGO, seniors, youth, we need to work together. We need to listen and learn from one another, to share resources, to give and take, to collaborate, to consider all stakeholders. And we need to trust each other and to have a shared vision. I personally don't think we are preparing the youth for the labor market. We are actually preparing them for the lifelong contribution to the future society. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the best closing remark we could end on. You go ahead, Ceci, next slide. Thank you to everyone who joined. Bantu, I don't know if you wanted to say any goodbyes or thank yous if you're still on. We really appreciate the attendance, and we will be formulating a blog that has come out after this event. And I'm sure the recording will be posted somewhere. We'll coordinate with making sense on that. Bantu, did you want to share any last words?
Thank you, Nancy, for moderating today's session on behalf of EDC, and to our dynamic and inspirational speakers, Satya, Audrey, and Navir. I'm eager to keep the conversation going about ways in which technology shapes the labor market, as well as how youth are adapting to the rapidly changing world while making use of the little resources available to them to achieve economic and technological growth. For more discussions like this, please join us for our upcoming GYEO 2030 solution sessions on topics ranging from green jobs to financing innovations and how young women are driving inclusion for digital jobs. For more details about GYEO 2030, I have posted under our chats our link to register for these sessions. And we thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, your evening, and your night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.